Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to session 22 of the Business School Leaders Forum, brought to you by GoToWebinar by LogMeIn. Today's session is joined by Tania, Roquette, Solutions Director at Full Fabric, and Oliver Matthews, Chief Marketing Officer at Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, and they'll be presenting on the future of higher education admissions. In a moment, I'm going to pass over to Tania, but before I do, this session will have a poll and there'll be a Q&A section at the end. So if you've got any questions, please type them into the question tab on the control panel, and hopefully we get a chance to answer all those questions at the end. So without further ado, I'll now pass over to Tania.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be part in this year's MBA Business Leaders Forum together with Oliver. My name is Tania Roquette. I'm a Solutions Director at Full Fabric, as Paul mentioned. I've been working in the higher ed sector for the past 11 years, first as an admissions director, and then as part of my work in Full Fabric, highly involved in the redesign of several admissions process, some of them with Oliver. So it's a good thing to have him here today. So really looking forward to share some of my learnings with all of you today. So I'll pass on to Oliver.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I'm working at Frankfurt School of Finance and Management in Germany as the Chief Marketing Officer, and I'm responsible here for the marketing, so brand marketing, for recruitment and for admissions at the school. And so it's really nice to be here. Tania's invited me to come along and share a few insights on how we manage our processes for recruitment. And actually, I've actually been around in the industry for about 20 years now, almost 20 years. And so this is my fourth university that I've been working at doing marketing and admissions.
Great, thank you, Oliver. So just to start the presentation, so obviously over the past few months, we've all been bombarded with several articles about the future of higher ed, the impact of COVID-19 in higher ed enrollment. Some people defend that universities will maintain and expand their online presence, while others defend the value of in-person education. To make things even more complex, student expectations vary as well. In a recent McKinsey survey conducted with high school students, only 25% feel prepared for a remote freshman year of college. Other universities are surveying their students about coming back to campus, and about 60% say they are prepared to come on campus and the rest want to stay remotely. So universities need to cater for all these different expectations. So one thing is certain, universities need to listen to students' concerns and perspectives and respond accordingly. And what we see for several years, even before COVID-19, institutions across all sectors are shifting from a product and service mindset to experiences. So universities need to adopt that same mindset. And to meet today's student expectations, universities will need to offer greater flexibility and ensure their students have a personalized experience. In the past, many universities see themselves as selling degrees or offering a better career to their students. Modern universities are replacing those models with a learning lifelong partnership with the student. And I believe that's the future of higher ed and higher ed admissions. Students nowadays expect experiences that are personal, convenient, quick, and consistent, again, across all sectors. To focus on the entire student experience and at the level of personalization expected, universities not only need to invest in people and processes and technology, but across many different departments as well. In this graph, Gardner actually identifies 7 key aspects that impact the student experience. And you can see that the first one is the student recruitment and enrollment, because that is the first experience that the student has with your brand, with your institution. And it has the potential to make or break that entire student experience. So that's one of the areas where we focus a lot with our clients at Full Fabric, is this first piece of the experience, and what we want to talk about today as well. Unfortunately, when we speak with many universities and when we look at their processes, many still offer a disjointed, fragmented, and not a personalized experience. As part of Accenture's Digital Divide study, university administrators and their students were surveyed about their student experience. And you can see here, while 60% of the university staff rated their student experience as great, only 13% of the students agreed. So this shows the gap, and it shows that many institutions think they're already doing enough, but it's still not enough to meet the student expectations. So there's still a long way to actually meet student expectations. So one of the things that we always say is universities need to invest in technology, no doubt about that, in their process, but also people. And the modern admissions team is different today than 20 years ago. Universities that want to create a more student-centric strategy need to build a team that reflects that goal. Admissions team will need to increasingly work with marketing, with academics, and other departments within the university, and use data. Data is really an important pinpoint here to build that coordinated approach towards building a consistent and personalized student experience. And part of what Oliver will share later in the Frankfurt case study is how he uses data in his process. So the higher ed industry is moving fast. New trends and developments call for new job requirements. Admissions team obviously need to look at the admission policies, which is very important, but they also need to have someone within the team with strong data analysis skills so that they can really read the conversion rates, interpret those conversion rates, and turn this intelligence into action. This includes things like analyzing conversion rates from different student subgroups and see which ones convert better, what are the weakness points in the process, focus on targeted data-driven communications, not mass communications that are sent to everyone. Not everyone consumes those types of communications in the same way. Analyze engagement data, things like last update of the application form, percentage of completion, and other metrics that help the admissions team prioritize who needs to be followed up and how they can improve their student experience. So in short, what does the modern experience look like? Obviously, to delight students from the start, universities need to build an admissions and onboarding experience that is personal, digital first, consistent, intuitive, and provide value to students. Nowadays, it's not acceptable to ask people to scan documents and send by email. It's not acceptable to ask them the same information over and over again. It disengages them. It provides a poor experience. And this is particularly important nowadays as prospective students might not have a chance to visit your university or even speak with someone from your team before they actually get admitted. So they need to rely on the digital experience to make a decision. I hope that all universities now understand that optimizing the student experience is not a nice thing to do anymore. It is imperative to be able to compete in today's world. So we'll more than happy to answer more questions at the end, but I'll now hand over the presentation back to Paul so he can launch the poll and to Oliver to share his case study as well.
Okay, Tania, the poll has been launched, so we'll just give it a few seconds so everyone can answer the poll, and then we'll pass over to Oliver.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so the poll results have come in, and they are 42% have said yes, 0% have said no, 42% have said only partially, and 17% have said not sure. So I'll now pass over to Oliver to go into his presentation.
Great, thank you, Paul.
Great, thank you very much. So it's quite interesting seeing a quick result. I mean, that was a relatively unscientific poll, but at least it gives an idea about what sort of data people have and what we're considering. And that was actually one of the key things that I started working on when I got to Frankfurt School, was collecting data, because quite often it wasn't even just that different programs or different teams were fragmented in how they approached their admissions process or their recruitment process. It was also that people simply didn't have data from one year to the next. They couldn't tell me from one year to the next year, are we doing better, worse? Where is our problem? Where are the bottlenecks in our recruitment funnel? So it took a bit of time to get some of the systems set up, because I mean, the first year of collecting data, of course, you bring in a lot of data, but it's irrelevant in a way. if you've got nothing to compare it to. So it wasn't until a second year and a third year that we started getting enough data to really start looking at what is happening within our funnel. And that's where we get to this sort of situation. Now, I've tried to really simplify one of our programs, and within the time today, I'm going to really focus down on one key area. But I also thought this is quite a nice one, because the Master of Finance, for us, we've got 5 years of data that you can see here. And probably the most important thing is actually, if you see in 2015 and 2016 in the table, there's some dashes, there's some missing data, and that was part of my problem also. Just that I didn't have data. Even if I looked back historically, there was no way for me to pinpoint precisely what was happening or to have any sort of comparative data. And it was only once we actually started working with Full Fabric with Tania's company in about 2017, and that was our full year of data for the Master of Finance, and it gave us for the first time some numbers to look at. So what you've got here is a bit of a snapshot, and I also wasn't too afraid about showing 2019 as the most recent year in this program, even though it wasn't the best in terms of numbers. And what you can see along the top is that we work with hot leads. We actually have one level before that, the cold leads, but a hot lead means essentially that someone must have been in touch with us. On the applicant side, they must have done something proactive themselves to engage with us in order to classify themselves as a hot lead. Now, that could have been a telephone call, it could have been an email to us, it could have been they talked to us at a fair, it could have been they walked into one of our open days, but they must have done something proactive. And that's the moment we know we've got somebody who is vaguely interested. And the moment I get a hot lead, that's where we have the marketing machinery kicks in, and there's a lot of mechanisms to move people from a hot lead to a started application, or started applicant into submitted, and then also to move them through the admissions process. After submission, they have to attend an assessment center, they get admitted, then they have to accept their contract. And I'm sure this is very familiar. I mean, you'll look at your own application pots, and some programs will have many hundreds of applications for a relatively small class. Others, a good example would be one of our post-experience master programs. They're so highly specialized that we know that we'll get a submitted application, and they're pretty much everyone who applies knows they're qualified or working in the right industry, and so it's actually a very low ratio of submitted to accepted. But what was important to me here was to say that in any given year, I don't just measure how many applications I get, but also the conversion rates. And this is a little bit different, looking at the full value of how many leads or how many started applications versus how many can I convert from a hot lead into a started. And so in the table underneath, you actually see that the percentage of hot leads that I converted into started applications has gone up from 40% in 2018 to 47% in 2019. So this is quite good. It means we're getting more people interested in looking at the application form, and we actually had quite a big jump then, 2018 to 19. But in the second row, you see the conversion rate from started applications to submitted. That went down from 61% to 53%. And this is actually the first point I wanted to raise, just that in a way, when we're looking at this funnel of applicants, it's a little bit like whack-a-mole. We increase the number of people who became a started applicant, but in having a big increase in started applications, as you see in those bubbles at the top, that was a 13% increase in the real number of started applications. So a pretty big increase, but we saw a drop in conversion. So we moved more people from hot leads to started, but then we didn't convert enough of them into submitted applicants. The actual total number of submitted applicants went down by 0.2%. And in real numbers, that means we basically saw 2 less submitted applicants than the previous year. Essentially no difference. In terms of the numbers, we have about 500 applicants 2 years running. So a job for me is like, okay, I'm looking at this funnel, I'm looking at all my conversion rates, and I'm trying to see where within this data, where is a weak point? Where can I improve my conversion in order to make it better? And that the first thing I looked at for 2020's intake, the one that's still running, that I haven't actually shared the data for here, is because we still have 3 months left on the plan. But is how can I retain this increase in started applicants and convert more of them now into submitted? And what we're doing is, between each of these different statuses, each of these moments in the funnel, we look at what mechanisms do we have, how can we personalize it, how can we automate the process in order to encourage more people to take that next step and to keep moving this volume. So great, hot leads have moved into started. Now I have to find a mechanism to improve started to submitted. And I can guarantee when I get more people to submit their application, it'll hit my conversion rate on the number of people going through to the assessment center. And then I'll be looking at how do we bring in measures there. The one that I want to really highlight today, though, is the bottom row, admitted to accepted. So for those of you that have different terminology or different process, this is basically the number of people we admit after all of the assessments are done, versus how many people actually accept a contract. And back in 2015, you can see that we had 54% of admitted students actually sign a contract and come to us. So 54%, I wouldn't have counted that as amazing. It was okay, but it felt to me like this has got to be the place where we can have the quickest win. If nearly half of all of the people we admit don't turn up in September, that's a huge amount of work. That's yeah, I mean, that's roughly half the good applicants that we're bringing in. Or imagine it in terms of leads. We've got 2,000 hot leads there. We put effort into 2,000, and it's only valuable in 1,000 of the cases. It's, you know, depending on how you look at it, that's 50% of our energy is wasted. So if we do the same amount of work on all of the other statuses, and we can simply increase the percentage of admitted candidates who accept, we get far more value out of the same amount of effort. And that's what we did. So each year we got a little bit better at our data collection, and we kept the submitted applications is increased slowly, and I'll show you that as well in a moment. But we increased the number of people that we actually retained in our process, therefore increasing the class size without significantly increasing our market share. I mean, increasing market share is also a target, but retaining the effort you've put in is really important. And so that's why we have this very nice increase from 54% to 64%. And I'm pretty confident that it's going to keep moving up. And we have a rough target of around, an ideal scenario would be around 75% retention. I want to see 75% of my admitted students becoming signed contracts. And then that's that 25%, we can't force everyone to come to us, but that would be a very nice percentage to have. This is an insight into the real numbers that go behind it. I mentioned before cold leads. You can see that at the top. This is actually the dashboard that I have in Full Fabric. So it's divided into two parts. On the left-hand side, where it says prospects, this shows all of the people in the pipeline before they submit an application. And on the right-hand side, it shows all of the people who have pressed the submit button and are moved into the admissions team. And you can what you can see there is the number of people left in the pipeline at the end of the year. So this is like a closed year. This was 2019, once all of the dust had settled and what we were left with. And you can actually see that in the cold lead pot, we still had another 3,500 leads. People who we had their data, but they weren't actively engaged with us in any way. And we basically try and move people very simply. This is a very visual way of doing it. Each of the programs has this dashboard, and we just try and move everyone from one status to the next. Every time a cold lead becomes a hot lead, the number changes over, and it's a very nice, simple way for people to manage. A lot of mechanisms going on behind this, of course. And this is a separate way of looking at it. These are growth charts. What this shows me is, if I just said at a moment in time, I've got 160 submitted applications. Last year was 150. for that given day, perfect, but it doesn't tell me what the story over time is. So we build these graphs, and this shows us precisely how we're doing. As you can see, purple is actually 2020's number. So this is the current status today. And I've put this in just so you can see that we compare then the 3 previous years and precisely how the data flows and when submitted applications come in against the newest data. So we are actually slightly ahead. We're ahead of all 3 previous years, but it's only by a few percent. It's probably worth mentioning at this point that Frankfurt School is famous for finance, in case you hadn't realized. We're in Frankfurt, we're a finance specialist. So a Master of Finance is one of our oldest, most established programs. So for me, it's actually, this is a very well-established market, and I don't expect increases anymore of, say, 20–30% in application volume. If I can keep the total volume of applications going up 3 to 5% a year, then I think we're doing well in this program. Some of our newer programs are seeing those big increases. I know many other schools launched a data science program. That's where I expect double-digit growth, say 50% from the first year to the second, another 20% from the second to the third year. So these, we have far kind of larger percentage increases. But it's also important then to see very visually as well, so I can present this to people, how the market looks and what's happening. So just coming back then to the conversions from an admitted candidate through to enrollment. So we're really looking at just one section of our funnel. This is after all of the hard work has been done. And what we did was we mapped out every activity after admission accepted. This is an overview of what we're trying to do, and we work with, as you can see, Canvas. So the very first thing is to get them into the atmosphere, almost to make an admitted student already feel like they are part of the class. Give them access to the learning materials. We get them into a class group. We keep them going with things like postcards, and we actually have found a little technique. We have auto handwritten postcards. It's basically a computerized arm that holds a pen and it writes, so it looks like it's real handwriting on a postcard, and we send them this. Very small engagement tool, but if we trigger at roughly 1 or 2 week moments these activities, whether it's receiving a postcard through the post, or whether it's an introduction call with their study advisor, or is it a social media group they joined, or right now they're joining a lot of Zoom calls, everything is there to trigger firstly engagement, an emotional response, a commitment to the school, and to make sure that we know who's in our pipeline, who have we still got, where have we got problems. And this is a bit of a quick show of some of the different things that we do. Sometimes we have to pack all of these activities into 2 months because they're only admitted in the summer, but sometimes it can be stretched out over 9 months, 10 months. If they got admitted in the previous October, then we have to keep them happy, essentially engaged, for an entire year before the program starts. So we do need this mechanism, and we have to automate it so that people get this steady drip feeding of information and engagement. And this is the other side of it. So it's not important enough just to say, hey, we've got a plan, we've got all of this data, we're monitoring them, we're looking at what activity happens. And the whole point was to increase that percentage I showed you at the beginning, to move people from having that 54% conversion to having a 64% conversion. What is it we actually do then to figure out to stop people dropping out? And the ones who engage, they're always going to come. They always log into Canvas. They open the mails. They join a social media group. They book their accommodation and attend events. We get it. Those are the ones who aren't the problem. They'll always be fine. What I was looking for was the dropout risk. So Canvas gives me a list of everyone who has signed in, when they signed in, what they've done. Within Full Fabric, I also then cross-check against who is opening their mails and who responds to mails. who joins a social media group. So whether it's their Facebook group or their WhatsApp group, depending on where we've put them. We also can monitor through Full Fabric every event they go to. It's assigned on their profile. We can see what events did they go to, did they sign up and not attend, did they sign up and attend, and then we're looking for risk. So the moment someone is identified as not having logged in frequently to Canvas or not at all, and they haven't told us that their visa has arrived, or we notice they haven't booked their accommodation, all of these lists are automated, and then we get an alert and shows us, okay, we've got a candidate here who is not engaging on 2 levels, and we can identify as in a medium risk or a high risk candidate, and then it triggers a response, whether it's more monitoring, a closer involvement, more active follow-up with them, or very specifically phoning them and saying, hey, clearly something's wrong. We notice you've not got your visa, or we're worried you've not got accommodation. And that simple act of engaging really early with people, knowing that if somebody isn't joining a social media group, it's maybe not the end of the world, but it's an indication that emotionally or mentally they're not totally engaged with us. And it allows us to catch people who are likely to get stolen by the competition. Quite often they say, yeah, I didn't do it because I'm still talking to another program and they're going to let me know about a scholarship and I'm having finance issues. A very common story. But if we can catch them before they make a decision, we can convince them to stay, or even explain to them different methods of payment, whether it's about delaying payments through a different payment scheme. There's stuff they don't think about, or they're afraid to ask about, and it enables us to keep them involved with us. Because if we don't do it and we just find out when they email and say, you know what, I'm withdrawing, then it's too late. It's very hard to get them to change their mind after the fact. And that's why we have this system now. And this has evolved over time as well. I mean, I wouldn't want to say that this is perfect or that we've got it nailed down. It's evolving. We had another round of improving our yield management system this year. So this is actually the latest system we've put in place this year. And the whole thing is to make sure that we retain as many people as we can. Okay, so I mean, also, if you consider this is what we do between the admitted candidates and contracts, so it means that we can equally have measures in place between somebody who's submitted and is attending the assessment center. We also notice we invite someone to the assessment center, doesn't mean they'll show up at the assessment center. So there's little mechanisms, checks and balances in place in each of the status changes to make sure that we minimize the dropout risk and maximize the attendance of the top quality candidates. And there's always room to maneuver. Within every supply chain, within every funnel that we have, there's always room to secure more candidates from the work we've already done. Okay, and of course the results. This is what they should look like, a happy group of Master of Finance students. This is our most recent intake. And you know, it's actually, I know this is what keeps me going in the industry, is every year at a certain point, this massive group of people that you've been dealing with as data, as names in spreadsheets, emails, suddenly they turn up on campus and you see how inspired and engaged they are. And they turn up and they thank you for the great engagement and for looking after them, hand-holding them. And that's what I work towards, and it's worth it. And, hopefully that's you see that across other universities. I know a lot of people have said the same. But if we can keep them engaged and happy, we get the best out of our group. So hopefully I've drawn a nice natural line between just looking at data and coming back to the human element at the end. So this was a very short snapshot of what we're trying to do here.
Thank you, Oliver and Tania. So we've got some questions which have come in. So if anyone has got any questions, feel free to type them into the question tab. And we've got a nice amount of time, so hopefully we can get through all of them. So the first question is to you, Oliver. So obviously you've been talking around cold and warm and hot leads. So the question is, what technology are you using to qualify cold, warm and hot leads?
Okay, so this is all done within Full Fabric. So, and we have it's actually a very simple mechanism, because when you import data, say you go to a fair You turn up at the fair, you collect leads. In theory, if they've spoken to you and they've filled out a sign-up form, that makes them a hot lead, and then we import them and they're a hot lead. The moment they engage then with a mailing, or they log into their application, so long as they've used the same email address, then Full Fabric matches it for us and immediately moves them over to the next status. So we don't have to manually update the statuses until it gets to admissions. So the statuses we put in there are all automated changes based on certain activities, behaviors. And yes, so we set up some trigger mails. We set up certain things like, if someone attends an event, then this happens, and it moves them through the process. It's only when it gets to admissions then that's manual. If someone is a submitted applicant and we want to invite them to the assessment center, that takes a human to look at every applicant and say, okay, do they qualify or not? But we've automated as much as we can, and automation is only as good as the people who are doing it. And it's every year we think of new ideas of what mailings to automate, what timing to put in there. Has someone not been active in their application? Did they not open an email? If they didn't open the email, therefore in 2 weeks they receive a personal follow-up. I mean, personal, it's still automated, but it looks more personal.
Thank you, excellent. So we've got another question. So I think the both of you can actually answer this one. So I'm going to put it forward to Tania first. So the question is, has there been a difference of impact of COVID-19 on different courses, say between MBAs and Masters in Management courses?
I can speak what I hear from our clients, and what I've heard is that yes, there is a difference on master programs, particularly the ones that don't have a prerequisite in terms of professional experience. There is actually more demand, and I've heard that from several different universities, that there's actually more demand from some of the students that have just graduated from bachelor programs and ended undergraduate program and might not have any potential job, and so they go straight to a degree program. This is actually a good time to do that. For MBAs, this is probably different. It also depends, obviously. There's some institutions are moving into blended MBA programs, and those are actually being quite successful. It depends on the institution itself, but in some cases the MBAs are seeing a decrease. But I'll let Oliver, he has all different kinds of programs in his institution, answer that as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic that I've spoken to so many different universities about, because we all want to know what the competition are facing. What I've seen is there are clear trends in different countries. I mean, I'm benefiting from sitting in Germany, where Germany's has had a lot of good press about how they've handled the situation. And we've picked up applications that I would say we probably wouldn't have got if the UK had handled their situation better. Likewise for the US, also they're not doing too well out of the press here. And as Tania pointed out, it also then varies program to program, level to level. So a few just anecdotal examples from Frankfurt, and also the same from several of the German competition that I spoke to. The pre-experienced master programs, so consecutive masters, doing really great business. I mean, the applications are really coming in strong, 20–30% increases in different portfolios. So this is starting to look very good, and it's really picking up now. But at the same time, this is a portfolio where getting an applicant quite often means you're getting international applicants. So at the same time as saying, yeah, we're suddenly seeing an increase in applications, but will they get their visas? And this is an issue for India and China right now. We just don't know. And yeah, at the bachelor level, which I also handle the bachelor recruitment admissions, this is tricky. I mean, we have an 80% home market for our bachelors, and high school grades are delayed by anything. It depends on the region of Germany. They're delayed from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. And considering normally we get the grades in June, July, that puts a lot of pressure on us. So we really don't know who's going to get the grades and start this year. Will they take a gap year? Is there anything to do with a gap year? Will we get more people? So there's a huge amount of uncertainty there. And yeah, for the MBAs, that's also a tricky one. For us, part-time is very stable. It's very people who are in Germany. We don't have a lot of fly-ins, but we get a lot of people traveling around, and they're opting part-time and saying, yes, I can do this. Ember is struggling because more senior people are not so willing to commit, and full-time is very international, so highly susceptible to the visa and travel issues. So a lot of uncertainty there.
Thank you. So that sort of leads into the next question. So the question is, how can business schools best support their students during difficult global times such as these? So I don't know if you want to sort of answer that one, Oliver.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we also discussed a lot internally, and our policy is to be as transparent as possible. What we realized is that if you give a very sanitized message, an overly political message, or denying the obvious even, pretending that nothing's happening or everything's going to be fine, it undermines your core message that people don't trust you. Everyone's reading the news, everyone has their own opinion on how serious Corona is, how real it is. There's everything from full denial to complete overreaction. So what we're doing is we said, okay, we have to be transparent. We just produced a video, for example, where we simply do a walk around campus, following people and saying, look, these are the rules we've got in place. These are the changes that we've made. This is how the classroom looks. These are the prevention mechanisms. And saying, well, look, we don't know what the future is going to be, but we're preparing for everything. We're preparing for the worst, and we can show you that we've done it. And that goes as well for the online and the online learning versus on-campus learning, giving people a choice. And many schools have taken this route of saying, we're going to offer a classroom-based version of our degree, but we have to assume that some people can't turn up in September and some people don't want to. And that was also quite interesting to get a survey back from our existing students and seeing that a decent percentage of the students simply don't want to be on campus yet. They're not comfortable. They want to study online, at least for the first couple of months. So we're being as understanding and as flexible as we can, and communicating it very openly and trying to be as quick to market with information as possible. And also acknowledging when we don't know something.
Excellent, thank you. So I've got a question here for Tania. How are business schools adapting their recruitment strategies to the current climate?
So the first thing that I've seen is obviously recruitment is going fully digital. So while in the past universities relied a lot on physical events such as recruitment fairs, MBA fairs, as well as open days, info sessions, all those opportunities to engage prospective students are not possible in the current days. And so everything is going digital. And digital has been important for many years now, but now it is essential. There's no other way. And so I think that's the main thing that I see business schools and other universities. We work with medical schools, engineering schools, and they're all feeling the same. They have to move their recruitment process and the touch points with their candidates fully digital. And so I think that's there's no way around it.
Thank you. I've got another. Yeah, of course. Go ahead, Oliver.
Especially this idea of the physical fairs. This is something that, I mean, like I said, I've been doing recruitment now for 20 years. And when I started, there was nothing but fairs. You fly to a location, you meet thousands of people at a fair, you collect, sometimes even people have got printed out applications ready for you. And your business was fairs, events, face-to-face. And it's really dwindled. I mean, it's the same with every school. We're all facing like increasing online competition, everything's going online, but the fairs are still there. And what I've loved about the last few months is I no longer have to look at these lists of fairs from whichever provider, whether it's QS or the MBA Tour or Access MBA, and think, well, they've got this wonderful travel plan around the world, but every fair is so expensive, and a bit of a fear of missing out. Which ones should I buy into? Which ones have enough data to show that it could be worthwhile, based on historic experience, but also based on the predictions they're giving? And where do I feel I have to be just in case? If I see 3 of my competitors there, should I sign up for fear of missing out? Do they know something that I don't? And what's the great thing is now it's been cancelled for everyone. we can all just throw ourselves in without worrying, throw yourself into online marketing and say, okay, the fairs were insanely expensive, both financially and in time. And now we can put all those resources into even better online provision. I mean, for the market, it's been brilliant. The students have loved it. They've really engaged. The question is how many fairs are really going to come back in the future or in the same format. Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure how that one's going to go.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a question for you, Oliver. How can business schools turn their alumni from passive stakeholders to active marketeers of the school?
Okay, that's not a new question at all. I mean, you know what? I mean, what we've found is, and I'm sure everyone's had a similar issue when you get back in touch with a class of, say, the 2010 graduates from whatever program, and you reach out to them and say, hey, we really want to invite you back and to get in touch with you. And you get a spattering of responses, maybe three or four really highly kind of engaged and eager people get back in touch. And then you realize that the majority of the class just didn't even bother to answer. It's a little bit about kind of how have you looked after them in the meantime? And your alumni won't give back to you if you don't look after them while they're on campus. While they're on campus, then immediately after graduation, when they're not useful to you, they haven't got great career stories, they don't have high-powered jobs, they can't donate money to the school, or not in large amounts, and yet you should look after them anyway and keep them engaged in anything from involving them in the admissions process. Brilliant tool, because firstly, it's a pain trying to find enough interviewers even in a good year. And second, if you can put an alumnus into an interview position, they are a brilliant ambassador, and they suddenly feel connected, not just to the school, but to the future class that they helped recruit. They interview them, they have a say in the quality, they bond with the people they interview, they connect to them in LinkedIn, and then 3 or 4 years later, they can maybe even help place them in a job and find them an interview or give them some inside information. But I think it's that constant involvement of your entire alumni body in a variety of activities. So we have like a list of 10 to 15 different alumni engagement activities that they can get involved with. We have an approved list of alumni that we're willing to have engaged in, for example, in admissions and other things. And then we try and keep them engaged. Monitor who's doing what, share the engagement opportunities around. Don't rely on anyone too much. And then in 5 to 10 years, when you really need them and you want to be able to pick up the phone and ask for support, they're willing to answer.
Thank you. So I've got a question which has come in for Tania. So you mentioned benchmarking around admissions. What would be your advice on benchmarking in light of the current disruption?
So the first thing that I say is benchmark your own institution from year to year, from program to program. The other thing I've seen, there's not a lot of data to benchmark online. There's not a lot of data that universities share. Having said that, a lot of universities cooperate with each other. And so I've seen a lot of universities speaking from admissions director to admissions director. I know there are, for example, on the MBA Friends groups where they share some of this data and kind of benchmark some of the data. But there is not any website or anywhere where you can go, so you have to do that yourself and start with your own data. I think that's usually where I recommend universities to start. Look at your own data, like Oliver showed, for the past 5 years. Share, for example, see from one program to the other. Why does that happen? Is it the market? Sometimes that is, but maybe you have a different team that is doing something different that is working really well, and you can also adopt different strategies. Particularly in large universities where everything is so decentralized, you can learn a lot within your institution.
Fantastic.
There's also GMAC. For those, many schools here are going to also be GMAC members, and you get some quite useful reports from them. They also provide an interactive tool for benchmarking of MBAs, how many applications. It would be nice if they could actually say, okay, I want to look specifically at 1 or 2 other German schools and say those are precisely the numbers, but they won't give you that data. But they do have a nice 10 school basket of competitors. You pick the schools and then can compare admissions data. So I mean, that's really the only source that I know of that is really useful and gives decent comparative numbers.
Yeah, I think they don't share conversions, but they do share actual numbers. Is that right, Oliver? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you. So we've got another question. We've got a few coming in at the moment. So I'm going to put this to the both of you. So I'm going to put it forward to Tania first. So business schools are inherently global. How are business schools and their students dealing with global mobility restrictions?
So obviously, like Oliver said, there is a lot of uncertainty at the moment, particularly around visa, the student possibilities of traveling. So what I've seen and what I think is the best practice is really offer greater flexibility. So for those that are able to be on site, on campus, and wish to do so, obviously have an offering for them, but have a different option for those that either cannot be on site and those that actually are willing to do so but cannot, for example, get a visa or cannot travel for other reasons. So I think that that first slide of listening to your students, what is their expectations, what do they want, survey your prospective students, and then offer greater flexibility and different options is really the only way to provide a better student experience and be able to accommodate the different expectations of today's students.
Yeah, I mean, the at least for programs where they have one international module, or if there's an exchange semester, these are a little bit easier to handle. You can shift an exchange semester to another time of year. With a single module, you can offer like a home-based module instead of the international, or you move it to a different semester. We face more issues with these really, as you said, the global programs where we only teach 3 modules in our home country and the others are taught in 5 different continents. This is a headache. I mean, I think like many other schools, there's nothing we're ever going to be able to do to fix the health issues, visa restrictions, if there's quarantines in certain countries. I mean, if this situation were to carry on in the current way, with constant shutdowns in different countries, it could kill that type of program and move it into an online format. What we're doing though is saying, okay, we have got a mixture of some people who can go to different places and others who can't. So making sure that wherever we teach, we will have people in class who is sat there physically with a professor, and there are people who are going to be online. For the next semester, we can't avoid this. So we have to make sure that the technology is in place so that the people sat participating online have as good an experience and engagement as possible. And that means making sure, for example, that the room has enough large screens so you can simply show the faces of the people who are online and give them the engagement tools, give them the chat function, the ability to raise their hand digitally, and that the people sat in the room can also see them and talk to them, engage with them. So that blended interactive delivery it takes a bit of investment in hardware and in software and in training for staff, but it's definitely possible. And we have to plan for that because we don't know exactly when all of the restrictions are going to be lifted.
Thank you. So just to touch on the point around the technology and communicating stuff. So we've had a question come in around that, which I'm going to put forward to you, Oliver. So what are your main communication channels for reaching Generation Z? And are you exploring platforms such as TikTok?
Yeah, TikTok's yes, we're exploring TikTok. This reminds me a little bit. We explored Snapchat, did some campaigns on there. We tried both the organic and the paid Snapchat opportunities. The good thing is we found that Snapchat just isn't a marketing channel for us, and so we reverted to focus on Instagram and WhatsApp. And in Germany, still Facebook is actually still relevant. With TikTok, this is a tricky one because I mean it's not a community in the sense if you put everyone together and have a discussion. It's an opportunity for people to share very short, funny messages, dances, music, voiceovers. This is difficult because the whole system thrives on organic content. I've not yet seen a company or business school university who have done a genuinely interesting TikTok channel. But if you can get your students themselves, current students, to engage on it or to get things going, that is where it can work. But you've got to foster a very organic approach there. So I've always stuck to saying, okay, for now, Instagram is our key portal. This is where many people are still active, and we engage them there. We have age and target group relevant channels, opportunities, and we have a large amount of help from our student body. They're very engaged. They're willing to work with us on this for free. They manage channels, sub-channels, groups, and they work together with us to ensure that we have some measure of coordination, if not control.
Thank you. So I've got another question which has come in for Tania. So diversity and international recruitment is of such importance for business schools. How can business schools benchmark this in terms of leads, outreach, and recruitment?
Once again, I would say start with your own institution. Look at your web analytics. For example, visits to your website. Where are they coming from? What's the percentage of leads that actually, for example, request a brochure or actually download some sort of relevant content and provide their details. Also on your events, the application form, obviously. So all those people that start an application form have given that first step of interest in your institution. So look at that to see the diversity there. That can be a really good benchmark of the students that will actually come. So if you have, for example, a strong campaign in a particular region, and that doesn't translate into started application, then that campaign is not working well. So like Oliver said, I always say that universities should adopt a bottom-up strategy. So start with those that are actually gone through all the whole process and start converting there. And you start getting a lot of wins with lower effort at the beginning of the funnel, which obviously usually has bigger investments in terms of time, skills, new channels, as well as budget. And after you have a really polished funnel and you know those conversions are working well for you, there's always room for improvement, but then you can start optimizing the beginning of the funnel as well. And that, when we look at the funnel, sometimes people say, okay, we'll look at the whole funnel as one. But you can also do these sub-conversions to specific subpopulations, for example, specific countries, gender, specific backgrounds. So all those subgroups of your personas or your students are actually really good benchmarks for you to see what's working for different types of subpopulations of your student body as well.
Thank you. So we've got another question, and I think it's which can be put forward to both of you. So I'm going to put it forward to Tania first, and obviously Oliver, you can follow. And the question is, what has been the biggest change in how students are communicating with business schools and vice versa in the last 3 years?
Okay, 3 years. So one of the things that I've seen, I wouldn't say 3 years specifically, is that probably longer than 3 years, but in my time as an admissions director, we had a lot of people coming into the door, coming to talk to us proactively. And I think that shifted because of a lot of reasons that we discussed before. Nowadays, people expect to find the information at their fingertips online without any help, without any support, and fast, convenient. They don't have any patience to wait. And this can be a generation thing, but I don't think it's only a generation thing. It's the expectation that has been set by other technologies, by other industries. And so that has been the biggest shift. You can't just wait for prospects to call your admissions office or your recruitment office for people to actually start the application. You have to have content available so that they can provide their contact details organically because they want to see a piece of content and they provide their contact details. You have to analyze the people that start the application. So you have to go and look where they are because they're looking at your institution online. And so you have to be there and then provide them the assets, the relevant information. And the information is different as they go step by step. And so having that understanding of where they are in the funnel, and what interests they have and personalize the information to them. I think that's what has changed, and that's why it shifted the dynamics of the communication.
Yeah,
Oliver, do you agree?
I totally agree. I mean, I was thinking of examples right now. I mean, yeah, people they don't walk in the door. We get so few walk-ins these days. It's a little bit surprising. They come for events, but actually, what I've noticed is also the impatience. You can run an event, and it's maybe a month away. We can't run events every day, but people don't want to wait for a month to turn up to an event or an MBA fair, an MBA open evening. They want the information now. And the moment we put a chat tool on our website and said, okay, we've got a chat that's that in the evening is automated, in the daytime there's human operators behind it. That was great, because we'd been seeing a drop in the number of email inquiries. Suddenly the chat tool is there, and we got all of our inquiries back again and increasing. And that was great, except it also started killing email entirely. People couldn't even wait to switch to an email client to send a question. They're like, I just ask it on the website. And that impatience also, I see a big negative side to it, where you get somebody who's sat on the full-time MBA webpage and they just email and say, where's the scholarship for the Ember? You seriously can't navigate to the Ember page and look for this information. So this is not unusual, that people are suddenly, they can't wait. They want their information, they want it now. They go for these chat tools for quick information, and they want it at that moment. They'll do their research online. They use Google, they use databases, they check out their schools, they watch our YouTube videos, and they're doing all of this without a real face-to-face interaction. And this impatience and the expectation that information is always available on demand, and the schools that aren't providing it are the schools that are going to lose.
I would just add something else. I think you're still able to talk with candidates, and particularly for an MBA, I think that's still very important, to get them on the phone, to get them on a Zoom meeting. But you have to find ways for them to book you for that, whether it's, for example, a CV assessment, providing something of value that make them want to talk to you. And then when you have that person engaged and talking to you, then it's the time to convert. But before you have that opportunity, you need to have them find you and have them engage to you and book a meeting. And that's really hard. That's where I think that the dynamic has shifted over the past few years.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one last question. So I'm going to put it forward to Oliver. So with more courses moving online, hybrid and blended, how do you see marketing and recruitment strategies being impacted in the long term?
You know, it's I think what we're seeing now is an acceleration. It's not a major change. For years, I mean, there's been discussion about whether online education is better or worse than on campus. I don't think we'll ever answer that, and I don't think the whole market will switch one way or the other. But what it means for our marketing recruitment efforts is that we have to show and act and behave as best practice for our institution. Because if you're claiming to teach a fully blended experience, then candidates should expect that their marketing process and the admissions experience is fully digital and professional and works. If you can't even digitize your admissions process, or if you can't provide interactive marketing and sales experiences, how are you going to do it in a degree program? So if anything, I'd say that we have to be a role model. We have to show in how we behave and how we do our business that we can teach in this way as well, because they can't experience the lessons until they've really signed up and they're part of it. Trial lectures only go a certain way, so we're going to be judged on everything we do.
Thank you. Unfortunately, it seems to be that we're out of time for this session. So I'd like to thank you both for some great answers to those questions, and obviously a great presentation earlier. So just before we go, I'd like to let everyone know that tomorrow is the final day of the Business School Leaders Forum. I popped in the chat 2 links to the next 2 sessions. So the first session will be at 2 p.m. BST, and that will be with Nick Barneville from ESMT Berlin, and Liz Hammergreen from BI Norwegian Business School, and they'll be discussing building business school alliance. The next session after that will be at 3:30 p.m. BST, and that will be with David Lafleur and Mark Wells from Incendi, and they'll be discussing creating pedagogically powerful learning experiences. So if you'd like to join those sessions, please use those links, and you can obviously book on. Inside the chat box as well, there's a link to the virtual exhibition, so you can find out more about Full Fabric and a lot of other our sponsors. So just before we go, I'd like to thank Tania and Oliver again for a great presentation, and we look forward to seeing everyone on another session tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone.